the manifestation of that life force is to be respected and revered. That's new. That's new. Very new. Even though the sages of the past, Christ, Buddha, Zoroaster, and others, talked about the God in whatever form that they used as being present in all human beings. But we're just now getting around to the fact that human life is something to be held sacred, not to be pushed around, not to be categorized, and so on. So person equal person on the level of manifestation of self-worth. Okay, now let's look at the business about a person. It follows very nicely that the definition of a person within the frame of people who look at people from a human point of view is that the person is unique. A combination of sameness and differentness to every other human being. Each one is unique. And that means that sameness and differentness are aspects of uniqueness and not signs for love or war. I know some people who say, well, we're so different. I say, how great? They say, no, we can't get along. I say, why not? Because we're so different. Then when I get down underneath, differentness scares people, ask them to look places they haven't looked, and they have saddled themselves with the idea that sameness is what makes love. Do you know how bored you get with sameness? When I have people who insist upon sameness, I say, okay, let's do a little thing. And I get about 10 people together, and I have somebody start out, and everybody does exactly what that person does. And in 5 minutes, I have vomiting sometimes. I have people who say, I don't want to have anything more to do with this. And we once and for all put to sleep the idea that sameness is love. It is not. We need a little of it here and there just to ground ourselves, but that's not all the time. So, human being is unique. All right, now we come to something that over here nobody seems to pay much attention to. And that is that we do not create life. Life has already been created in the form of the egg and sperm. So please, if you are parents and you give your kids the nonsense that you created them, will you stop it? Because all you did was activated the conditions under which they could come. And your parents didn't create you either. They just activated the conditions, and many times without your consent. All the time without your consent. So what we are into then is that life has already been created, and it's carried in us. We do not create it. Once people realize that life is already there, we just create the conditions under which this happens, and we do it by activating that potential. And in a way, it reminds me of epoxy glue. You know, you got those two pieces, and while they're by themselves, nothing happens. Put them together, and all kinds of things happen. So we carry the sperm and the egg, and when they come together, the potential for the creation of a new human being is there. And it's out of the life force that's already there. So we have to then look at the fact that we are spiritual beings. And if people get turned off by that word, some people still do, your life force, that's always there. It's been created, and now this is the way in which it happens. All right. Now when we look at the explanation of an event with people who follow this way of viewing, that everybody is a manifestation of self-worth, we're all unique, and when we come to the explanation of an event, we recognize that event A, whatever that is the outcome. Now you can remember what I put, the perception and the rules and all the rest of that. Is an outcome of the relationship between B plus C plus D plus E plus F. Now that's a systems concept. The systems concept has been used in technology and in medicine for a long time. Why would it be when you go to the doctor sometimes and you complain of a headache that he takes your temperature rectally? That used to happen. What is the relationship between a headache and a rectal temperature reading? For people who understand the relationship of system, there is a connection. For people who don't, well, it's a mystery. But what we now know is that things respond to things. A responds to B, responds to C, responds to D, responds to E. And for those people now in the world who look at families as a system, this happens and that happens and then that happens and then that happens, we're following then the same approach, systems approach. And all that a systems approach means is that you look at the fact that everything responds to everything else. That's all. There is no one thing that can be to blame. You can't pick out something to be blamed. Here, of course, you got the one right way, and who doesn't have it, you can blame them, can't you? But on a systems approach, no blame is possible. Because A happens and B happens because A happens, C, and so on. That's all that systems thinking means and is. That you look at it in terms of constant action, reaction, and interaction. Now, I could take a minute off and give you a very oversimplified definition of system. First of all, a system is composed of variables that are essential to accomplishing the joint outcome, whatever that is. Okay? To an oversimplified system for creating a child, you have to have a man and a woman, and an act of intercourse, and the right timing. And then the chances are that a child will come. Okay? The essential ingredients that are required for a joint outcome. Okay, now then, these essential ingredients relate to each other in terms of action, reaction, and interaction, and develop a sequence and order to accomplish their endpoint. A closed system is one in which the sequence always remains the same. An open system is when the sequence changes. That's the main difference between a closed system and an open system. Okay. All right. So when you think system, you simply think this happens, and that happens, and that happens, and that happens. So here's a family interview. Pa is sitting there with his arms folded like this and looking sour. Ma is sitting over here, her head down, and occasionally, in a little tight voice, she makes a little whimper, occasionally looking up to look at her husband. Son's sitting across the way, tapping his foot and looking like he wants to run out of the door. Little sister over there coughs periodically. Now, all those things are related. Before we understood system, we thought they came by themselves. But everything is related to everything else. Pa turns sour, Ma turns worried. Son is scared and is ready to run. Baby sister, who is now a body through her cough, is trying to get their attention. See, when we began to put together what we know how people react within the frame of a system, then we began to see a pattern that we hadn't seen before, that everything again is related to everything else. We just don't start coughing. We just don't start looking sour. Then after a while, there are certain kinds of patterns that come. All you have to do is give a trigger, and it comes. Like a kid can start to a swear word, and that could be Pa looking like that, and Ma looking like she was looking, little sister start to cough. Because after a while, after the patterns are developed, then it's only a trigger to make the whole thing come into being. In an open system, of course, we don't have people stuck. They can comment and they can move. In a closed system, you cannot. It is as though you were stuck. You are always the bright one, or you were the bad one, or you're the skinny one, or you're the one that can be expected to make fools of us, and so on. It's a whole scapegoat mechanism in relation to that. So when we look at behavior, any behavior Let's look at it individually. It's always the outcome of the relationship of the parts to each other. Now, I did that on a family basis. Let's look at it in terms of an individual basis. I'll say more about this later, but I work at 8 levels of every individual. So that, and what are the 8? I'll just go over them so you will know when we come back to them. When we do some work on parts, I will show you that more. But look at the levels. We have a physical. We have a body. The body responds. It initiates things also. Then we have the intellect, the thoughts we have. That's the intellectual circle around us. And most all of us know the power of our thoughts on our body. We think a frightening thought and we can get goosebumps. Then we have feelings, our whole emotional thing. All the thoughts that we have are accompanied by feelings. So we have that whole emotional thing. And we know that some feelings are bathing and positive and some are toxic and negative. Okay? Then we know that we have senses, those things accompanied by holes, H-O-L-E-S, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, navel, pores, etc. So that's a piece of it, our senses. And many of you know when you're in a state of blind anger, you don't see anything. The adrenaline pours into your body at a faster rate than the oxygen does, and you turn blind. And our senses react that way. So we have the whole sensory aspect. Then we have the whole interactional thing, the people we live with, which we're responding to. Then we have the whole thing about the context, which is the lights that are there, the colors that are there, the air, the sounds. All of that are also there. Okay. Then we have the nutrition, what we put into our body, the liquids and the solids. They all have a relationship to what happens. And then we have the spiritual part. That's 8 levels. So when any behavior comes out, if we look at it in terms of the individual, how are all these 8 levels working together to create this, what's happening here? Just like an individual's behavior in a family, how is this all set within the frame of the family? Okay. And I'll do more with that later. So, now we look at the last one here, which is the attitude toward change. Within the frame of where people look at themselves as of value and equal because they manifest life and see themselves as unique beings and recognize that they're always responding and being responded to, these people know that change is constant. It is always going on. So the first thought is change is constant. It is always happening. And being constant, it gets accepted. And getting accepted, it becomes welcomed. And now, recognizing that all change means that I go from point A to point B, I'm always going into a place I've never been. That's what change means. I go to a place I've never been. So that means risk is constantly being taken. Going into the unknown, which is change, means taking a risk. A risk of being where I have never been. I think there was someone this morning who said, I've never been before a group. She took the risk to come up here. Now that's over with. She can never say that again. And what she found out when she took the risk is that she didn't die. Not only that, but she got some nice things happening to her. So, security, then, within this frame of thinking, rests on taking risks. Not on keeping a status quo, but on taking risks. Risks that go with the fact that we're changing. And it's always something new if you've never been there. Who knows what it's like to to menstruate when they haven't menstruated? Who knows what it's like to have a deep voice when they had a voice that wasn't so deep? Who knows what it's like to be pregnant when you've never been pregnant before? These are things which change, and all these changes mean you go into the unknown and going into the unknown means risk. And the fact of the matter is, for me, I've just given you, for me, the elements of learning. We accept the change, we take the risk to go beyond, and that's how we learn. We do not learn by keeping status quo. Okay, so here, the risk then. Security is in taking the risk, is risking the unknown. People tell me, especially therapists, well, what if these people don't want to do it? I said, how can anybody want to do anything they don't even know what it is? One of the secrets of asking people to go ahead is to arrange for them to go ahead, because who can make an informed decision on something you don't know anything about? You can't. And so I make it easy for people to go with me somewhere they haven't been. And then, having been there, they can feel good about it. Because there are plenty of people who feel that they could never, if you said to them, please take a risk, they said, no, can't do it. I do a lot of posturing with families, a lot of sculpting. And people say to me, well, how can you get them to do it? I said, all I do is say, will you join me? I want to show you something. And they'll always do it. I don't think I've had anybody refuse. But if I say, well, would you sculpt? I want your permission to sculpt. And they say, no, I don't want to do that. And they say, but you know, it's going to be very good. But how do they know that? No, I don't want to do that. And pretty soon what you got, instead of an invitation to go someplace, you got an interaction in who's got the right to tell whom what to do. So I don't do that. I simply say, here, I want to show you something. I reach out my hand, and then we're here. I cannot make an informed decision on something I don't know anything about. Now, of course, here's where ethics come in. Because the most vulnerable place is when you have allowed yourself to go into to allow someone else to give you direction. That's already vulnerable. And the people who accept this grave responsibility have to have a high sense of ethics and value. That this is not something that you're playing out for your own ends. 4 weeks ago, in Oregon, I read about the start of a group of people who were against, to support the victims of psychotherapy. Because it seemed that there were more than the usual number of men in that area who were fornicating with their patients. I don't have anything against fornication, but I think there's a time and place. And people, special people. So ethics becomes very important. And a real disengagement of yourself from anything that people do that says that you're good. Rather, that if you can help people to exercise for themselves something they need to do to help them get someplace else, rather than it is a satisfaction to you that they do it. And I have the hunch that what I'm saying right now doesn't apply to anybody here, but a lot of times people with perfectly good ethics refrain from helping their people to stretch a little to move somewhere because they don't want to hurt them. And as a result, so much therapy stagnates. Have you noticed that? Stagnation of therapy, you go over the same old ground all the time, and nothing really happens. So the therapist needs to be able to push out the boundaries, to go into the new risk area. Because as long as you're in the same old area, nothing will happen. The value of saying what's going on that's bad only comes once, the first time you say it. After that, it's really nothing. So after that, we need to push this out some way. Have you ever had people who told you the same story every time they came in? Let me see how many people know that. And are you aware that the longer you hear that, the less value there is? And then there are a lot of people after a while who say, well, that's all they talk about. And I say, sure, if that's all you let them talk about, that's all they talk about. I've had people who say, well, I don't want to interrupt somebody. And I say, well, let me show you how I do it. Come on up here, Jessie, would you? I want you to just talk on, and I'm going to be your therapist.
Well, I'm having this problem with my husband, and he comes home late every night. He comes home late every night, and he comes home drunk, and he just...
Hold it 1 minute. Hold it 1 minute. Now, I'm going to tell you what I just did, because I saw her in for a long, cold evening. And I saw by her voice that it was sing-song, heard by her voice, a sing-song, and I know she has rehearsed this many times before. You could tell that, too. And she was completely unaware that I was there. So I want to do something for her, and so I'm going to stop her. And I just gave you a new name, Mirabelle. That's what you told me it was. Mirabelle, what are you feeling right now as you're sharing that with me?
Angry.
Angry, okay. Could you say what that anger is about?
I feel lonely.
Okay. Are you feeling lonely this minute, here with me?
No.
No. Okay. How are you feeling here, right now?
I feel good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me go back, and what I'm hearing you say is you want more from that guy you're married to than what you're getting. Is that it?
Right.
Okay. Now, you see, if I let her go on and on and on, I don't give her anything new to look at. I don't give her anything new to be in touch with. She was talking, first of all, from a memory. And I know it's painful, you know, if you've got a guy and he doesn't, you don't get much from him, you think, what shall I do with him, you know? Or a gal the same way. But what I needed to do was to get her in touch with something was going on with her right here. And to get her in touch with that she was a person, and I was a person, and we were going to do real things together. Now I want you to go talk more and more, and the first time that I interfere, don't hear me. Because people can get so wrapped up in what they're talking about that they don't hear anything. So go ahead. Full steam ahead.
Well, he comes home late every night, I mean, without a fail, and he's never available to me. He's drunk all the time, and I need help with the kids. The kids are driving me nuts. I'm with them all day, and I can't stand it anymore. It's just too much for me to bear.
Are you aware that I have just now come touch you?
Yeah.
Okay. What I was aware of is that you were getting so loud that I didn't know that you heard yourself or I heard you. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I was. I'm angry about all this.
I know. And now, how do you feel about allowing yourself to let your anger feelings out?
Well, I don't like it that I get
When you
so
were
angry.
little, how was it with you and your mother and father when you got angry?
Well, I was punished.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't allowed. My mother would say that she was going to have a heart attack and this kind of stuff.
Okay. And now, at this moment in time, how are you feeling about you right now? Here.
Well, I feel a little bit guilty.
Okay. That you should have done something better. What should you have done better, Maribel?
Well, maybe if I were different, my husband wouldn't drink.
Well, I don't know. We might figure out how you can think that you could do that. That's a pretty hefty thing, to get somebody to open their mouth and put alcohol in. How do you open his mouth and pour the alcohol in?
Well, I don't do that.
Oh, you don't? Well, then maybe
No.
you don't have anything to do with his drinking.
Well, he tells me I do.
I know, but can you go and open his mouth and pour the alcohol in? Is he
No.
that? Oh, so there's something funny about this, isn't it? Have you ever thought there was something funny when he says you make him do it?
Yeah, I didn't like that when he says that.
Well, is it kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you were a little girl, did you sometimes feel it was your fault what was happening in your family?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Now when you look back, think it was?
Probably not. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's always hard to know what we can influence and what we're the cause of, huh?
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about this talk? I have a feeling it's strange to you, Maribel, is it?
Yeah, I want to pull away.
Okay, well, let's see, how far do you want to pull away? You want to go way away from me? Watch out, there's a curve there.
This is far enough.
Ah, very good. How'd that feel?
Well, maybe I want to move a little closer.
Were you aware, and are you aware, that here you can decide what you want to do? I can offer you things, and you can respond. I'll always ask you about that.
I like that.
Okay. So where do you want to be now?
Well, I think I'll be a little closer even.
Fine. Okay. Now, any time that you feel you'd
Yeah.
like to step back a little bit,
I can do that?
let me know.
Okay.
Now, that is about stepping back, what I'm talking about, but that's not what the experience is. The experience is that she can begin to do something different than what she's done before. And it has to do with her and not her husband. So how do you feel about all of this, Jessie?
I feel good.
Yeah. This is the kind of stuff, for me, that makes a new experience possible for people. That they can deal with themselves differently. Not the rehearsal of all of the horrors in their life. Thank you. All right, let's see where we are. We're at, what is that, 3:35, is that right? 45, yes.
Richard, do you always stand up when you work with people?
No, well, often, yes, often I do.
In and out like that?
Come on up here a minute. Yes, come on up here. I want to show you something. Come on up here. This has to do with vibrations and energy, okay? Now, first of all, let's just for fun do something. I know. Would you take a chair? Well, some of you will stand up. Take that one chair and put it right here. Right here. Turn toward the audience a little bit, okay? Now let us put another chair in front of that sideways for a table. I said, no, turn it on its side. Sideways. Yeah, that's a table. All right. Now would you put that chair over there? Over on that side, quite far away, on the other side of the table a little bit. All right, and then would you move your chair a little bit over? Yes, farther away from that. That's good. Okay, now would you sit down there? And then here are these two kids over here, okay? All right, now would you come and be a therapist and sit over there? Right there. What? Oh, the mic. Okay, we'll get it. All right. Now, there's a therapist. Now, will you sit properly, please? Now, would you please have, would you give her that paper and pencil? And that's good. That's fine. Now, will you interact in your mind with that piece of paper because you're going to get information? Now, this is about a 1940 or 43 view of a therapeutic session where the therapist is sitting there being very proper at taking information with a table between her or him and whoever else is behind it. Okay? And you sat there for 50 minutes or 55 if you wanted to be generous, getting all kinds of information. Okay? And never saying anything you feel or think. You only take in. And those people don't know from borscht what you're getting. And that's all right, because after all, they don't need to know, do they? All right. Now then, then we went a little bit further, and we took the table away. So would you take the table away? Now when you take the table away, it said that therapists or social workers, doesn't matter what it is, I call all change artists therapists. Now there was something else had to happen here because there's no table now, okay? And so at least the energy back and forth was a little bit clear, okay? Now periodically you'd put your paper down because it isn't so interesting to write when you got people to look at. And especially when you don't have a table to lay your arms on. So you put that away a little bit, okay? Now, however, you're still supposed to be proper, but you are looser. At least you can say good morning and this kind of stuff. Okay? All right. Now, this is the age, at this point, we're getting ready to repot the therapist. Because it was a well-known fact that at the beginning, you stayed like a potted plant and didn't move. Sometimes you would get up when people came in, but mostly you sat. Okay. All right, now, at this point in time, we could go through the period of where you put all these people in a circle because your chairs are already arranged in a circle. So why don't you do that with these four here? And you're part of the circle. The division has disappeared. And we have a nice circle. Well, that's a funny circle, but anyway. There, good. All right. Now we have something different. The therapist is still sitting, but at least the context is a little different. All right. Now we're into the new place where the therapist, in order, first of all, to stand what they're doing, need to have a chance for their bodies to move, for their voices to be heard, for them to have some expression. Because when you sit 8 hours or 6 hours in a chair, you get calluses and paralysis, and it usually travels upward by the end of the day. All right. So now, I'm going to get down here, and we're in the place now, and I think I helped some of this to come about. That I don't sit. I get up. And when I'm meeting people, come on, love, and you come on too, you can watch this, we're going to have it. So then, my friends are here. I don't know them yet, but I know that they are part of life force just like me, so I can say, hi there, I'm Virginia. Hey, how about standing up so I can really experience your total being?
All right.
Oh, I like that. How was that?
Not very good.
You don't like standing up?
Not really.
Rather sit down? All the time?
Oh, except when I'm walking.
Oh, I see. When you're walking. Well, let's walk a little, shall we?
Okay.
How's that? How's that? That's great. That's pretty good.
That's nice, yeah.
Yeah. Are you the kind that likes to be active? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous. I like to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to do anything.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Are there any other people in your family that are nervous like you?
Oh, everybody's nervous.
Really? How does it work? How does that work?
Well, we just kind of like to jump around a lot at
Like
home,
this?
you know, yeah. We get kind of excited and things like that.
Gee, you know, it just passed my mind. I don't know if this is really what it is, but maybe we should have nervous music.
Well, yeah, you can
It's
come
sometimes
home
called rock and roll. Isn't that
Right.
stuff, that nervous music?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about coming to a place where you, I guess, you thought you were going to get some help? What do you
I
feel about
pretty
what's
good.
going on?
You're like me. You're kind of nervous, too.
Yeah. I like to move around.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is nice. Can I sit down again, or do you
Sure.
want
Oh,
me to
no,
stand up?
no, that's fine.
Okay, good.
Anytime you
Yeah,
want to
that's all
stand up, just let me know.
Well, maybe I'll just stand up for a bit.
Well, why don't you do that? And you are?
Ginny?
Ginny. Why don't you stand up? How's that for you? How were you feeling? I take this as your husband, huh?
Yeah.
How'd you feel about what was going on between your husband and me?
Well, he's always showing off.
You like that?
No.
He's always showing off?
Yeah, he's always showing off.
Well, how did you feel with him? And what happened with him and me?
Well, he seemed to be getting along pretty well with you.
How'd you feel about that?
I didn't like that.
What didn't you like about it?
Just made me uncomfortable.
You uncomfortable?
Yeah.
How do you feel about my arm where it is?
It's all right.
It's all right, okay.
He makes me uncomfortable.
He makes you uncomfortable. Did you? Okay. Now, I don't know about this, but do you think that you were thinking that your husband should behave differently? Is that what you were thinking? Why you were uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Well, now, what do you make of the fact that I seem so happy about what he did? Because I am.
You're a little strange.
You know, that could be. That could be. Okay. And I have a hunch that there's somebody that you know or grew up with who was very proper. Is that true?
Yeah. Everybody.
Everybody was so proper.
Yeah.
And there was no fun.
Mm.
Yeah. Is that one of the things that happens in your relationship with Arnold over here? That there's not enough fun, or he wants fun and you don't, or something like that?
There just doesn't ever seem to be any.
Would you like that to change?
Yeah.
I enjoyed Could just hear that. So would you like to introduce me to your two children?
Yes, this is Kathy and Jesse.
Kathy. Hi, Kathy. How about you standing up? How'd that feel for you?
Fine.
How old are you, Kathy?
8.
8. Are you a new, middle-aged, or old 8? That means how close are you to your 9th birthday, or how far away from 7?
I'm middle-aged.
A middle-aged 8.
Yeah.
Where are you? A new, middle-aged, and old what?
I'm just middle-aged.
Middle-aged what?
I'm a middle-aged 40.
40. So if you're middle-aged, you're soon going to be an old 40, and then you're going to be a brand new 41. So you got 6 months to go before you turn new all over again. And you are?
Jesse.
Jesse. And how old are you, Jesse?
12.
12. Are you new, middle-aged, or old?
Old.
And so you're soon going to be 13? Hey, that's pretty good.
1 month.
1 month. Going to be 14.
No.
If you're an old 13 now.
12.
Oh, 12. Oh, I suddenly brought you up 1 year. How did that feel, that I made a mistake on your age and made you older than I thought?
Maybe I look older.
Has that ever happened to you before?
No. Mostly I look younger.
Well, so you have an individual experience with me. So how's it going to be 13?
I hope it's going to be better than 12.
Do you hope that 41 will be better than 40?
Yes.
Where are you on all of this?
I don't know. I feel kind of left out.
Well, come on in here.
Good.
And how old are you?
I'm 45.
New, middle-aged, or old?
In the middle.
You're middle-aged. 2 middle-aged ones. You're a middle-aged, 3 middle-aged, and 1 old one. Okay. Is your 46 going to be better than your 45?
God, I hope so.
I hope so. If we all stick together, we might make it in some way. What do you think? All right. Tell me how you felt about all this part.
Well, I liked it. There was a lot of closeness. I liked it. There was a lot of closeness, and it felt very much different than the sitting juxtapositions that they started in.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they see me work, are at the beginning horrified because I have so much fun. What I'm doing is alerting people to sides of themselves and parts of themselves that are there, or they couldn't respond. And so we can move from there. We can move from there. And so in the moving, myself moving, and being in a very human way with people, then they also can see more hope. And we haven't done anything about the problems at all, but look what we've learned about this family. Their shyness, their feelings of basically, almost all of them have said, we've had terrible lives up to now, we hope the next one will be better. This one's leading the way. And that these people are available. How do you know somebody's available unless you have a chance to activate the humanness? That's one of the reasons for telling jokes when they fit, and doing metaphors when they fit, to open up those pieces of the self that can begin to hear. How do you feel right now?
I feel better.
You feel better. And how do you feel?
I feel better.
And how do you feel?
Fine.
How do you feel?
Good.
All right. Now, here you are. You started all this a long time ago, but you were the star, so you weren't doing this in your own name. But what was it like for you to sit through the evolvement of the therapeutic context?
It got to be more and more fun as it went on.
More and more fun. And I have now T-shirts that are I. Now, depending upon how risky you want to be, it's if it isn't fun, forget it. And there's another one, if it isn't fun, fuck it. So it depends on, they both end the same, but one has a little more poetry than the other. So, if we can't have fun with what we're doing, do you suppose anything real is getting done? I don't think so. I do not think so. And so the more I can bring into play what I call the cosmic joke, the cross between our sacredness and our joke. Isn't it a joke? When you think of it, you lose your keys, and some people even get their spine hurting over anxiety about what's going to happen with those keys. Then when they find the keys, and they were in their pocket all the time, they can laugh. And I would like to see us notice that many times we're doing the equivalent of that, and to give ourselves the opportunity to laugh when we see that the fear had no basis. And I start even sometimes before. If you are afraid, somebody tells me they're afraid, and one of the things I might say is, will it kill you, you think?
No.
No, hardly ever does. And then I say, well, if it won't kill you, we got lots of opportunity to move. And then we can move. And you are in real life Gwyndolin.
Right.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now, well, how was it for you, the answer that I gave you?
The answer was great. I moved too, but I often have little children in the room, which makes it a little hard to get the attention.
You sit on the floor with them so that they can be at eye level?
Mm-hmm.
Then what do you do when you have to look up at the parents?
They sit on the floor too, usually.
Okay. And how is that for them?
I think it seems all right for them.
Do their backs ever hurt?
Well, they lay down. So, you know,
I mean, all adults.
Well, they lay down too. I mean, there's usually pillows or rugs, and they can sprawl if they want. The children run around and back and forth.
So if I went to your house, we'd have fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
I want to go on with this a little bit more, because the more you know about this, the more you'll understand where I come from in relation to this. What I essentially presented so far was a set of phenomena, 4 of them, that if I understood how they were experienced, perceived, or perceived and experienced and used, I could understand what else would happen. Now let me see if that point is really clear. Isn't it a different thing from, well, I can do it even better. How about, Peter, would you get the lady beside of you and bring her up here? And come on up here.
Lucky I'm not shy.
That's lucky you're not shy, okay. All right, would you go down in front of her? Okay, all right.
Could you say that a different way?
Well, it's all right. All right, that's one picture. Okay, now will you get up and will you go down in front of him? Okay. That's another picture. Actually, it's the same process. Now, would you both get up and would you go on his back? Come over here. Just go on. No, you just stand up and lay on his back. You're too accommodating. Just put it like that, over like that. Now, do it this way. Turn sideways. No, you both turn sideways. Now, you drag your feet and you just walk with her. Drag your feet. Okay, hold it just a minute. That's also called love. Now, would you turn around and you get on her back, but watch out now at this point in time. All right, now, all this, hold it now. This picture is the same as when one was down in front of the other. Same thing. A similar kind of thing. All right, now these are certainly ways you see people relating all the time. Now, to make the point, you don't mind now, you go down in front of him. Or that's all right, doesn't matter, whichever way it is. Now, people who live their lives like that, or any of these things that I've shown you, have to constantly be worried, fearful, worrying about somebody leaving them, not obeying, and all the rest of that. Okay. Now, so that the quality of their life would have to have things in it that would have to be dealt with, like I said. Now, when both of them are up on their own feet, that is a totally different kind of thing. Their lives are going to be lived quite differently. The chances are pretty good from this position that the fears will be real and they can do something about them. In the other position, the fears are like they're all around the place because the sense of self-worth is so low. Okay. All right. Now, if people don't know that they are, you can go down this time. People don't know that this is what they're doing and they're hurting, then wouldn't it be important for them to know what they're doing? I have yet to find the first family, no matter what country I did it in, when I made their communication postures, which is what this is, and which is what this is reflected here, when they were in this position, I said, what do you want to do? You know what they all did? What do you want to do? Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes the change was as dramatic as his change right now. Okay? All right. Now, why don't you just sit here for a minute, because I'll probably use you again. Don't go too far away. Just sit down there like, that's right. All right. So these ways of experiencing these different parts, of course, are going to have an effect on how their life is. Now, we come to a very funny thing. We're still dealing with the same phenomenon. And now we come up with some words. I said person equal person. Now the word equal, or I would say equality, although we have equality with each other, is spelled, that board is a little bit small, so I'm going to put this over here. Equality. Now we come to looking at two basic images of that word. Equality now, in the threat or the reward sense, means alike, exactly alike. It's alike. We're both the same height, we weigh the same, we belong to the same religion, we're the same sex. It means the same. In the seed model, equality means that we're part of the sacredness of life. Totally different thing. What I've begun to learn is that there are fine words. There are words like love and freedom and justice. And when I run those words through the threat and the reward model on one side, the seed model on another, I get totally different images. Now I'm going to play with that for a little bit. Let's play with the word love. Love in the threat and reward model means duty. It means you give me as much as I give you. It means blackmail. If you don't love me, I will or won't. It means bargaining. If you will do this, I will love you. Those are all ways in which love is experienced in the threat and the reward model. In the seed model, love is recognized as a feeling. A feeling. It is a bathing feeling. It is the result of the harmony of parts within the self, and a harmony within that self in relation to another self. It's a harmony. Has many facets to it. But it is essentially a feeling. It cannot be legislated, bought, or sold. And that's quite a different thing. So when I say I love you, in the seed model, I am telling you about my own feeling of harmony in relation to myself and in relation to you. And I am telling you, in the loving that I have for you as a manifestation of life force and me as one. If I say I love you over in the threat and the reward model, I'm usually doing it from a point of possession and survival. You're my husband. You're my child, possession. And therefore, love gets all mixed up with control. Because I love you, this is what you should do. Now, in pairing and in adult relationships, the most difficult thing for people to do is to be able to love each other without control, without reward, without threat. I know of no pairs of people, friends, marital pairs, sibling pairs, whatever, know of none who really can feel comfortable, alive, and really loving in a relationship which demands that they use control, bargaining, blackmail. It doesn't work that way. Or legislation. Can you legislate anybody to love you? Look at our divorces. Look what happens when people separate and one person accuses the other one of something terrible, and it probably is terrible, and said, "You shouldn't do that to me." That's all very true, but quite irrelevant. Quite irrelevant. You can't legislate love. There are lots of ways we can build it. There is a precedent, or an antecedent, I should say, to love in the hierarchical model, the threat and reward model, which is, I feel like nothing. Now, would you come back up here? I need you, both of you. Here is this little young, lovely woman, and she feels like nothing, let's say. She feels she will be something if she has him, okay? So you go and embrace her, okay? Now, he is really the answer to her survival. And she can say to him, "I love you." Now, he actually feels empty too, because you never have an empty and a full getting together. They just doesn't work. So he feels empty too, and he can feel full when she gives herself to him, and he can feel he's responsible for her at the beginning. Afterward, it becomes a rope around their neck. So she could say at the beginning, with stars in her eyes, "He is everything to me." And he can come back and say, "She is everything to me." Meaning that they're nothing without each other. Then they have to scramble to hold on to that, or else they will feel empty. These murders that take place with people who they call them deserted in love or whatever it is, where one goes to kill the other one because they no longer fulfill this image. All they're doing is that they're feeling now they lost everything. And so what they're doing is killing off the object that they think lost it. So I get very, very skeptical. I just felt so bad the other day. I had occasion to meet an old friend who had just remarried, and I was talking to her husband, and I heard him say, "I cannot stay away from her for more than 4 hours." And I thought, oh, heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. Anyway, so it's very easy to understand possession and control, how they go together and are called love. Because if I feel filled in your presence and empty without you, I can call that love. And when you pull it away from me, then of course I am like I am dead. And that's what the murders are all about. Okay. Now you want to sit down again. No, you stay right here, yeah, because I might need you. Who knows? You want to get that, okay. Now, when we have love that is an added thing, I have something added to me, something in a flow with you, is no substitution, but an addition, then we are always enriching each other, and we can leave and come together enriched. Now, there's some people in the world who think that's a fantasy and could never happen. Those are only the people who have never understood or experienced what it means to stand on your own feet and to like your own company. And so whoever comes in doesn't come in as a substitute, but rather comes in as an addition. And those are the relationships that really last and endure, because nobody is having to feed off anybody else. Now, if you want to come back here again. Now, these two at this point in time, they are standing on their own feet. They're not a substitute for one another, standing on their own feet. And so when they embrace now, they embrace from their own feet, adding something to themselves, not falling on each other. Watch that. Okay. Now, when they part with the idea that they've been enriched. They don't part with the idea of, oh my God, I'm leaving you, what's going to become of me? In the extreme. But they go out enriched to their job, to their duties, whatever it is, and come back again enriched. See, all that it takes to also add this view to our lives is a change of mind, a change of possibility. That's all it takes. Thank you. Would you sit down some more here? I may need you again. Never can tell. All right, let's take the word anger. In fact, it might be fun for you, and I think helpful to you, to take many different words and look at them in terms of the threat and the reward. The threat-reward model in a seed is the way I've named it. Let's take anger. Anger in the threat and reward model is, first of all, something you shouldn't have if you love somebody. And so you ought to try to get rid of it. If you're any kind of a person, if somebody sends an insult your way or something of that sort, the only decent thing for you to do is to get angry and blow their block off, right? Stand up, give them what for, okay? In other words, anger is something to be acted on or not acted on, to be ashamed of or to be proud of or something of that sort. Now, within the seed model, anger is another emotion which I regard as an emergency emotion, something that comes when something is out of balance, the same way that a red light goes on in the car when the gas is off or the gas is low or the oil is low or the water's low, and there's a warning light which says, look, something needs attention. And so in the reward, in the seed model, anger is that red light which says something needs attention right now. Something is out of balance. And so give it attention. Let yourself know what it's really about. Whether it is one part of yourself getting tight and trying to defend against something that another part of yourself doesn't allow yourself to do, whatever it is the emergency emotion. It's the emergency red light that says to us something is out of balance. And so we look at it the same way we look, and we find it an important friend. Not a pleasant friend, but an important one. Aren't you pleased that you have a red light on your car that tells you when it's overheated or the gas is low or the oil is low? You're very pleased about that. I know I am. And glad that I have it. I'm not pleased that it turns on when I'm 50 miles away from a gas station. I'm not pleased at all. But I'm delighted to have that warning. So when I say that anger is a friend, I mean it in a very narrow way, an essential part of us. All right, that's a whole different feeling. One of the things we know in anger is that our body is also bringing toxins inside. So the longer we have the angry feelings in our body, that we don't pay attention to it, the more erosion takes place. Because the literal physiological response in anger is that the adrenaline flows into the body at a higher rate than the oxygen does, creating this toxic condition. So people who get into chronic states of anger are creating a lot of toxicity for themselves, or who get into them frequently. Anyway, all right, now let's take another word. Let's take the word man. Man in the threat and reward model is somebody who is always right, strong, brings home the bacon, doesn't show emotion, okay? In other words, some kind of a robot. In the seed model, man is recognized as a being, human being, with all the feelings, with all of the softnesses and hardnesses that any human being has. A being, a human being, with many possibilities and no program for how to be, but a responsiveness to how that person is. Same thing is true with woman. Woman in the hierarchical model, or threat and reward, is somebody who should be soft, not too bright, and always caring. Okay? In the seed model, a woman is a person with the same potentials as any other human being. Let's take the word structure. Structure in the threat and reward model is something that some people get together, like in 1902 or 1905, bright, who decide how things should be. Then forever after, things need to be stuffed into that structure. in a seed model, a structure is something that is built to facilitate what is being done. And a difference in that is you have a baby born that's 23 inches long. You consult with somebody about the length of babies when they're born, and you find they're between 23 and 25 inches. So you get a cradle at 25 inches. Forever after, you put that baby into that 25-inch cradle. Whether they're 6 feet or 10 feet, doesn't matter. They need to be stuffed into the structure. As compared to, all right, you start out with something and then you keep expanding it to hold what it is that's growing. And one of the choices that we're making today, all over, our legal structure, our religious structure, our political structure, is that we are saying to ourselves in many places, the structure we had doesn't fit what we're doing. We need to create something new. We need to create something that allows us to do what we're doing easily. Well, you can take any of these words and look at them in terms of their threat and reward implications, and look at them in terms of their seed, or what I sometimes call the organic implications about it. Now there's an interesting thing. There are two words that belong to the seed model that I dance into immediately. And that is, whatever I'm seeing, I remember that my first thing is to discover what's there. To discover. So the word that stands out in an approach is to discover. And the second word is to develop choices. Okay? So the word discovery and choice looms far out clearly on the seed model. The approach is discovery, finding out, checking out, learning about, and then developing choices. Now the word that stands out in the threat and reward model, the first one, is to judge it. Is it right, wrong, good, or bad? To judge it. And so the word that stands out here is you judge it. You judge it on the grid of right, wrong, good, bad. Then the next word that comes is to enforce your judgment. Enforce what you've judged. You figured out that something is whatever it is, and you enforce it. You compel it. Okay. Now you can think of all kinds of things. Think about losing weight by using the seed model, which is based on selection. Losing weight in the threat and reward model is based on depriving yourself, punishing yourself. Okay? And you can think of all kinds of ways of going. Now, I want to leave that up there, but I want also to do something here. See, in a nutshell, it's a big nut, but it's a nutshell anyway. Let us say that the threat and reward model here which I was outlining is as I described it. And what I believe at this point in time is present in the operation of 95.5% of the people in the world at this point in time. Then we have the seed or the organic model, which generally and normally speaking is probably about 4.5% of the people untreated. Okay? So, if I do that, and please, these are statistics I made up. And I found out much research is the same anyway. But anyway, all right. So, I as a change artist know that I will start with the concepts, with the expectations, with the ways of going in the threat and the reward model. I start here. Here is my start. Now, whether I'm dealing with alcoholism, drug addiction, aggression, wife beating, molestation, inability to learn, any of those things, this is where I'm going to start. Now I have to start with respect. So, now, what does my respect consist of? My respect consists of that people are doing the best they know. And they will tell me what they've learned. So people who are in their communication blaming, placating me, super reasonable or irrelevant, are telling me that they have learned how to deprive themselves, work in the threat and reward model, and are telling me how that they have learned to discredit themselves, to make themselves fearful, because those are the images they carry around, and they're the best they know. And I respect that, because in however way they did it, they got here. Because if you're in front of me, or any me, you arrived somewhere. Now, it doesn't say what the price is that you paid, but you have arrived. So we need to start out with a respect that these people are doing the best they can. So anyone who wants to help to change needs to be prepared to add new possibilities. Not to take anything away, but to add. So I respect you where you are, but I can see that there are some things that are present that you haven't noticed or haven't learned. So I start out with a respect, and now I work on the principle of adding to what is. And that's the whole change process. I add to what is, and I'll get something else. That's the new thing that I will get. That's my theory of change. It can also be called transforming the present into something new by adding something to what is now present. Not subtracting, adding. Now, if you work at it, if I work at it this way, I add to what is, and I get something else, I have transformed the what is to something different, and now I am in the position to use that which fits me well, and I don't have to worry about having to use that which no longer fits me. So, by the principle of atrophy, that is, what no longer fits I don't use. So I don't even have to bother about erasing it, because it doesn't come up to be used. When I add something new, fits me, I don't have to worry about that which is present that doesn't fit me, just like in your clothes closet. You don't wear the dresses that don't fit you anymore, and you don't bother about worrying about them. You wear the dresses that fit you. And someday, if you get smaller or something, you can do that, or some generous time, give it to somebody or something. Point is that we don't have to waste our precious energy on getting rid of something. We can leave it in the corner of our closet, because who knows, when someday we might need one of these skills, maybe only once more in our life, where we need to hammer somebody on the head. Maybe only once. At least we got the skill. So, we change on the principle of adding to what is, I do, and then depend upon the principle of atrophy to carry me along, that I don't need to use what no longer fits me. I don't have to waste time destroying it. It atrophies by itself. So this is the principle of use. And by helping people to come to new possibilities through being willing to add something new, which means to risk doing something different, I have already begun the process of change. So, now, if I now look at this, I will start here, knowing that this is not only where people are, but probably where I was most of my life, and everybody else. So what do I add so that I can come over here and have these also as choices? You see, if I tried to eliminate that and all the things I learned from that and now only be this, I would be back here. I would be back here. So what I need to be able to do is to add this. and now find that I have many, many more choices. I no longer have to defend myself. When you say something, I can say, you tell me my hair is green, and I say, well, wait a minute, let me look. Hadn't noticed. Now, if I had hoped I'd have green hair, and I can say thank you if you see it, even though I don't see it in the mirror. I can play with that in all kinds of ways. Okay, so what we're then into is a way of knowing and being with ourselves that can help us in a flow, that when I come to someone, I know that they are manifestations of life force, that I know that we have things in common and we are also different, that I know we belong to a spiritual base, that I know that every piece of behavior has many more facets than that which I can see, that I know that it's possible to relate to time, which is also change, in ways that help me grow. I also can know that there are some important things for me that sometimes I may want to resist change a little bit. When I do it in an informed way. When I want to play the game of I'm not so good, I do it in an informed way. So when something happens, I'm not so surprised. But there's a whole other set of things that come out of this. And that is a whole set of technological things which are useful. And so what we have then is a much greater resource for drawing out things for ourselves. Now, tell you a little story. This has to do with Columbus. Now, I take liberties with some of the events of history, but never with the essence. Anyway, once upon a time, the whole world knew that the world was flat. All the navigation, astronomy, etc., was worked on the basis that the world was flat. PhDs started their premises from that, and so on and so forth. Now, one day in Portugal was a young, unemployed sailor named Christopher Columbus. And since he was employed, he had a lot of time on his hands, and since he was young, he could be curious. He watched the ships. And the ships, he noticed, went in an arc. He had never noticed that before. He said to himself, that's impossible, because the world is flat and they should fall off the end. He kept watching the ships. Finally, he said to himself, the world must be wrong. That was a frightening thought, a frightening thought, that he, this little unemployed sailor, young, pipsqueak, could think that the great minds were wrong. But he saw. Didn't fit what he saw. So he had this inside himself, this observation, a great burden. What was he going to do with it? Well, like most of us, when we have such a thing, we want to find out if we're crazy or not. And so we try to find and see if someone else has seen what we've seen. And Columbus did the same thing. He walked among his friends and started to talk. And at the beginning, many of them had glazed eyes and walked right past him. Finally, after a while, one of his friends said, "Come here, Columbo, old kid." And said, "You know, I saw it too." Okay? Well, they dug a big hole and went down the big hole, because this is a terrible burden and a terrible, scary thing to be against the tide. Well, finally, there were some others that came, and they had seen it too. And they talked down in this deep hole. Because once you can find somebody else that saw what you saw, now it gets even greater, the burden that you have about doing something about it. You cannot stop. But to bring something to the world that is not there is a great risk. Well, they finally got up their courage that they would take this risk to see what the world was really like. And so finally one of them had an idea, since they were all poor, curious, poor, they would ask Queen Isabella. Now Queen Isabella turned out to be the kind of a character who really didn't care whether the world was flat or round. She just responded to nice, lusty kids, guys, male guys. So when they came to ask her, she said, sure, here's the money. Go take it and go see what you can see. Well, you know what this history is. They made 3 ships, and they found out that the world indeed was not flat, but was elliptical. Now, I know that caused great consternation, because it meant that navigation had to be revamped, astronomy had to be revamped, virtually all the material and the information in light of this new finding had to be revamped. And you suppose that went on immediately? I don't think so. I think that there were people that resisted this all over the place. Like people when the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, it was at the beginning of the telephone, they knew he was a witch. This was witchcraft in its manifestation. When Edison developed the light bulb and electricity, the same charge was leveled at him. Anybody who brings in anything new stands the chance of being raked over the coals and sometimes killed, as in the past. All right. So, I think it took a while before all of the other observations were updated to meet the new information. However, if today you would meet someone and they would say the world is flat, you wouldn't even get upset inside. You would know that they were just kind of bonkers, and you wouldn't worry about it. You wouldn't get upset at all because you know better. Concretely, you know better. Now let me tell you what I think. I think that up until this time of the world, we have behaved as though people were two-dimensional, really flat. Something to be moved around, controlled, owned. And what we have now found is that people are round. And we are calling that roundness, that approach to people, humanistic. We found out something about what humans are like. Now, one of the things that's important to remember, Columbus did not invent the round world. And I certainly, and people like me, did not invent round people. We just found out that they're round. And that, for me, is where we are today. We're at a crossroads, an important crossroads of how we view people. That's why it's possible now for all the different kind of therapies to go into education. Education for being more fully human. Using what we know as a pathology as only something that tells us that something is wrong, and then move toward how can we use this to develop round people. And that's where I see this going at this point in time. And I'm fortunate in being one of the people who pushed my way through to know that people are really round. And that's then what it means for me to look at people as people who can have potential and have it realized, can have dreams and have it worked out. And that what people are bringing to me in the guise of problems are their ways of living which keep them hampered and pathologically oriented. So, armed with that, as I look then in the next 3 days, and you look with me and be with me, in looking at how we can move toward more joy, more reality, more connectedness, more accomplishment, and more opportunities for growth, while we look at how we can do this very fine education for people. Now that's really basically what it's about. And I'd like to find out from anyone who would like to share what this all means to you. What I have done this afternoon and this morning in sharing with you a base from which I come and where I would like to go, and all of the things that I shared with you in relation to that. I'd like to hear some feedback from someone who would like to do it, what this means for you. Okay? Come. Let me get your little thing.
I forgot about that.
Would you like to take that in your lovely hand?
All right. I just recognize that what you're saying is true, and what you've done for me today is to take some things that I've thought of and in more scattered ways and organized it. So
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment about what this meant for you? Come.
As I told Virginia earlier, this freed me, really, to break out of a mold.
Can you hear?
Can't hear. What should I do?
Here, what you do is, let's just do a little research. No, let's do a little research. You see, if you get that up there, do you see how lovely that goes?
Too short. That's the
no, you put that down. There you are, right there.
Right. How's that? Can you hear me? Okay. I said that what Virginia has done for me today has been to free me, to allow me to break out of the mold. I am a therapist, a hypnotherapist, of the traditional one of sitting there with the, the note-taking. And it always bothered me to have to do that. And we learned in NLP that we did have to gather a lot of information. And how does one do that without taking notes, especially if you're training someone else? And I've been really feeling frustrated because I wanted to do different things and couldn't let go of that. So she gave me the answers to how I can do that.
Thank you.
And I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else like to share a little bit about what is the meaning for you of this? Come. Tom, is that right?
Yeah.
I remember that from this morning.
Sure. I'm glad I did remember. I think one of the things that I learned today is that therapy really can be fun to both the client as well as the therapist, and it doesn't have to be painful, as sometimes we believe that it has to be.
Thank you for that, Tom. Anyone else like to comment about what kind of meaning this has for you? You know how much longer you're going to live if you're a therapist, and how much longer you're going to live well when you have fun with what you're doing? Come.
When I was up doing this last experience with Peter, it felt like I had really experienced both of those things in my own marriage. And what you were talking about the whole pedestal thing and putting my husband there and all of that, where I was really hanging on to him, afraid, as with Peter, that he might drop me if I didn't hang on real tight when he was dragging me across the floor there. And then the other, in switching, where I became much stronger, and then really having an awful time dealing with the fact that he was hanging on to me as Peter was hanging on to me. That just really brought back a lot of feelings with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Come. Say who you are and all that.
I'm Frank. I'm on the staff of FRI. I think you're in dangerous waters, in a sense, in trying to make people fully human, because I think much of our society is still geared toward this. We want them to shape up or ship out. If they're going to earn a living, they'd better produce, and we don't want a lot of excuses.
I produce, and I don't make excuses, but I know what you're talking about. So that's kind of like, at some point, with a nuclear thing hanging over us, which is just an extension of the threat and the reward model. So it's just an extension of that. So how long are we going to go be in blackmail? And then how long is it going to take for us to be able to come to our place on our feet and not have to continue like people have in the past, to bull our way through, to victimize our way through, but rather to move our way through? I have very little static to me from anybody. I'm sure there must be people around who think, watch out getting with Satir, because you'll find yourself doing things you never thought. However, I get very little static. And I think that has to do with the fact that I'm really willing to meet people where they are and to take them further. And it is not a comment on me, whether people do it or not. I do not find that my fate is going to be better in life if you do what will fit for you, but rather that I am there assisting you. I enjoy the walk very much. There was a comment here, and then let's get over there. Yes?
Yeah, two things that I like to comment. One thing Virginia helped me to remember is that we are all treasures. And I like this comment, that I'm treasure and we all treasure, and always to look for more positive things that we have, maybe hidden, but always to search for them. The other things that appeal to me very much, that we are all around, that human people are around, and just shows how much we have to discover and how much we don't know. And this is really to answer to so many things that we read, so many applications for therapy and so many ways of therapy. And thank you.
Thank you. I saw a hand back there. I think that belongs to Lori. You know that there must have been a time in history when people were at the same crossroads we are, where our awareness of what needed to happen was stronger than our will to take the action to have it happen and to do it in a way. And I think that's where we are. But I think now many more people are feeling that they can find ways to take the action that fits what they feel.
I wanted to share with you an experience and a story. A few weeks ago at our office, after much thought, we broke down and bought a computer. I heard this computer could do marvelous things, and somehow no one told me that it wasn't that simple to learn to use it. However, we had a friend who knew about computers, and so not so long ago, I decided we could use it for its first remarkable task, which was to type in the list of everyone for this workshop. And so this friend came to show me which buttons to push, and I started doing it. And I had typed in 64 names when I had to stop. And so I turned off the computer, and I went to see a client who was waiting, and 2 hours later I came back. Turned on the computer and tried to elicit from it what I had put in, and nothing came out. It said things like syntax error, change from yes, no, change to yes, no. And after about half an hour, I was seriously considering destroying the computer. And so I'll tell you the end of that afterwards, but it reminded me of an Arthur Koestler story in a book, Janus, where he talked about an illiterate Arab shopkeeper out in the Middle East who had a poor little shop and who prayed to Allah to send him an abacus on which to do the sums by which he could collect his daily wages. And he prayed so hard and so long that it was finally heard in the great mail order department up above, and a little mistake was made. And instead of an abacus, what appeared in his shop the next morning was a magnificent, brand new, shiny computer with about 50 dials that had within it all the secrets of the universe. However, he was an illiterate shopkeeper, and he knew he had prayed for an abacus. And so he started trying to twirl the dials, and nothing happened. And he kept twirling them, and he got angrier and angrier, and finally he kicked it. And when he kicked it, the number 3 came up on the screen. And he kicked it a few more times, and somehow the number 8 came up. And so he was very excited with his new toy, and that's what he did, and that's the way he used it. And he passed this on to his sons, who learned a few more things about whether they could kick it or whether they could push the buttons. But what they didn't know, and what they never knew, was that within this machine were all the secrets they could ever have wanted to know, but somehow they didn't know how to get it out. And along the way, if there ever was a manual for how to use this computer, it either wasn't delivered or it was lost. And so the story is that what I did is I called up the same friend who came over and found out that what I put in the computer was lost because I hadn't pushed the right button before I turned it off. I had to punch in something that said quit and then push a return button and then turn it off. And so when it came back, it said data out of range. And that meant that everything I put in wasn't there anymore. So we started over the next day. I guess the point of this for me is that I think you, Virginia, have the manual. At least you have more of the manual than anybody that I know, and I think with your help, we're going to go home with a lot of the manual that we can use to make those marvelous computers that we are and our relationships are work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, let me close then with a short meditation, okay? So if you'll all let yourselves, let your beautiful eyes close. And as you do that, will you be in touch with your body being relaxed on its chair? Now let yourself get in touch with your breathing. Gently feeling it, feeling your breath rhythmic and comfortable, in and out. Now let yourself give yourself a message of appreciation for you, for your sacredness, for your treasurehood, for your ability to discover and to choose, as well as your knowledge of how to judge yourself and force yourself. Be aware. Now let yourself come in touch with you, a being on this earth. And let your attention go to your feet and let them take in the energy from the center of the earth as it so quickly travels from that center upward to your feet and legs, into your torso, bringing you the energy of groundedness, your ability to be practical, be related to realistic things and earth things. And let yourself come in touch with the energy from the heavens as it moves down through your head and face and neck and arms, bringing with it the energy of creativeness, of intuition, of sensing, your ability to be inspired. And as you feel the energy of inspiration, creativeness, intuitiveness, join your energy of groundedness. Become aware of a third energy that grows out of this. Your energy to be connected with other people through your arms and hands. Creating now a three-point source of you. Your connectedness with the center of the earth through groundedness, your connectedness with inspiration from the energy of the heavens, your connectedness with your ability to be connected with other people, and bringing all these energies together, creating for you at a moment in time all three of the possibilities, being realistic, creative, and connected. And as you allow that thought to come further into yourself, give yourself a message of appreciation for you, and to watching and giving yourself courage to move toward being the fullest being that you can be. And furthermore, to give yourself that courage to allow yourself to use what you know in the interests of other people. So now as we come to the end of this day, I want to thank you for your attention, your time, your questions, and I look forward to new steps tomorrow. I hope that you have a good evening, one that fits for you, and I further hope that you could use yourself to influence whatever it is you would like to have happen in such a way so that everybody you contact wins. And when you feel like it, let your beautiful eyes open and let yourself get ready to take that step which will move you out of this building and into wherever you need to go.
Thank you so much.